ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Da 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 da! You sound insane. You realize that? Yeah. The whole world gone crazy! Are you serious? Ladies and germs! It's showtime.
That's fun.
Welcome in, Man Fam, to another episode of Mad About Movies. I am your host, Brian Gill. And usually when I am the first voice you hear on an episode, you know that something has gone horribly wrong. And that, I think, is quite true given the movie that we are discussing this week. Kent and Richard aren't here. It's just me from the regular Mad About Movies side of things. But I am joined by a co-host that I'll intro here in just a second. We are going to be talking about a little movie called Artemis Fowl that dropped on Disney Plus a couple of weeks ago to about virtually no acclaim whatsoever. So I'm excited to do this, but we have a great guest. We have a VIP who's joining me for the first time on a main feed episode. So please let me welcome Quinn. How's it going, Quinn?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm glad to be here.
Good, man. Good. Thanks for being here. Number one. Number two, thanks so much for your support. If you don't know who VIPs are or what the VIP club is, go to madaboutmoviespodcast.com/VIP. You can sign up to join our Patreon club, provide some support for us, and in return for that, we offer at least one episode a week, a throwback episode usually that is exclusive to the VIP. We offer all kinds of perks and stuff, including a Discord server that is exclusive to our VIPs. And Quinn, you're a big player on our Discord over there.
No, it's great, talking to all the people, and it's one of my favorite things, and a lot of great movie recommendations I want to watch and highly recommend. It's great. Yeah.
So that's the last thing I'll say about the VIP, and then we'll move on. We'll talk about you, Quinn. We'll talk about this movie here in just a bit. But the thing with the VIP is that we have found over the years, maybe the biggest thing, it's not even so much about our episodes and the t-shirts and the handwritten thank you notes and things like that, that we've heard from so many people over the years who say something similar to, I love movies, I love talking about movies, and seeing movies, obviously, and I just don't have a whole lot of people in my life who want to talk about movies at the same depth and at the same frequency that I want to. And so when we started that Discord at the end of last year, I admit I was a little skeptical about it, but it's actually turned out to be a really great thing. And it's cool to see. There's plenty of days now where it's like I can't hardly even check in because of work or whatever else is going on. And then I head over there and I see that there are hundreds of conversations taking place across all those channels and stuff. And so it's really cool. So Quinn, again, thanks for being a VIP. We really appreciate it. And thanks for joining me here today, so we can talk about this one. Kent and Richard refused to see it, so it's just you and me, man, and that's for the best in this case. But let's talk about you just a tiny bit. You're the first time guest, like I mentioned, never been on the show before, so I always like to ask our first time guests a few questions. I'm sure you probably know what to expect here, but very quickly, first things first, what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all time is got to be Goodfellas. I love a good gangster film, and the acting is great, so Goodfellas is my number one, easy, all time. Nice.
Okay, that's a good one. What else falls into that category? Just real fast, you said you like the gangster films. Is there other one that you love beyond Goodfellas or something? Some people, I think Goodfellas is a bit of an outlier for them as far as like the other films that they really love, because Goodfellas is almost universally loved, and some other gangster films maybe aren't quite as much. But is there another one that you really dig, or another couple?
So another couple I really love, Godfather 1 and 2. We don't talk about 3 ever. And I gotta say, Gangs of New York is just a great film.
Nice.
Yeah, so that'd be my choices.
Good call. What's your least favorite or most hated movie of all time?
Oh my God, that is a lot to pick in. My least favorite movie of all time has probably got to be Joe Dirt, just because I remember seeing that as a teenager back in the day, and I walked out. So Joe Dirt is my pick.
Nice. I went to see Joe Dirt in the theaters at the Dollar Movie that used to be around the house, but it was on Tuesday night, so it was half price night at the Dollar Night movies. And it was in the summer, and one of our youth interns from my youth group that year took a bunch of us to see it, and he just sat in his seat. I'll never forget. He just sat in his seat with his hands covering his eyes, going, no, oh no, oh no, oh no, the whole time. Like he could see his whole career flashing before his eyes because of this movie. But classic. All right, man. Real fast. What have you seen Now You See Me? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Now You See Me is the pinnacle of cinema. I don't know how you can top it. Citizen Kane has nothing on it. The acting is top notch. The story is top notch, and I can't believe they made a sequel to it. I was just shocked how you can do better than perfection.
All right, good deal. Third one's coming next year or the year after, maybe. So that'll keep this podcast going. So that's we appreciate that. We appreciate that the Eye and company are so committed to keeping this show going for so long. All right, man. Let's talk about this movie. So maybe we could put it off for another 30 or 45 minutes, but I guess we should go ahead and just get into it. Artemis Fowl was supposed to come out last year, correct?
I think last July.
Okay.
I think.
They put that trailer out. I don't think it got particularly good buzz. I'll tell you this. I saw the trailer and I was like, that doesn't look good, but it doesn't look quite as bad as everyone's making it out to be. And then they pushed it, and I thought that's actually probably a good idea. Try to get it fixed, figured out. Second trailer also did not instill me with a great deal of confidence, I gotta be honest. And then in Corona times and such, this was a real easy one to move to Disney Plus. I think Disney probably knew this one was a bit of a sinking ship, at least financially, if not creatively. So this was a really easy one to say, hey, we're just going to drop this one on Disney Plus and clear out the release date, so we're not trying to figure out a slot to put it somewhere else. Before we get full on into the movie, now you requested to be on this episode months ago. We talked and you wanted to be on this one. I think I emailed you like a week or two ago and just said, hey, if you want to do something else, that's fine. I totally get it because it looks like this is not particularly great, but you're a loyal man, and so you're sticking it out. Give me your background on Artemis Fowl, the property and the books and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. So as a kid growing up, the book came out in 2000. I was a fifth grader, and I read it in one of my English classes. I loved the book. Mm-hmm. And all my friends at the time, because Harry Potter was just coming out, the first movie, later next year, yeah. And I tried to defend Artemis Fowl, like, no, it's a great story. It's this Irish kid who's a genius, and he's like a millionaire, and it's really cool, and the world is great. You have to read it. And when I saw the first trailer, I'm like, that doesn't really look that great. But you know what? I'm finally getting the movie. The kid version of me would always want to see it. And then I saw the movie, and I have second thoughts. Maybe I should have just stuck with Harry Potter.
Yeah, dude. So this is you said you were in fifth grade. I think I was a senior in high school when that first book came out. So I'm ancient. But my brother was into this. My brother's 4 or 5 years younger than me, and I remember him coming home with these books to at least some extent. I don't know that he was obsessed with them, but I remember them being in the house and stuff. And he dug them, and it just never was something that caught on with me. As I've said before, I didn't even read Harry Potter until I think after the fourth movie came out. It was just a period. I was too old for the books in my mind, at least, and this kind of qualifies. So I have almost no background on this whatsoever, other than the couple of trailers and stuff that we saw. I guess once more before we fully get into, and then let's get your general thoughts on the movie and stuff. But like, just from a very basic level, how many? I don't even know how many books there are. I guess I should have looked that up before. Do you know off the top of your head how many books are in this series?
I can't. I only read the first 3 growing up.
Okay.
There's so many now. It's like a comic series, graphic novels. I think there's 8.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing 8 here on the page. Okay. Just from a real broad stroke standpoint, does this movie encapsulate the first book exclusively, or is it trying to blend a couple of books together? I guess is my first question. Is this pretty spot on with the first book, at least as far as the story and the timeline goes, or is this a blend of multiple books?
It is not at all like the first book.
Okay.
It is a blend of book number 1 and book number 2.
Okay. All right. I'll be honest, that was something that I thought was probably pretty likely. Again, having not read these books, just watching this movie and the way it didn't mix together very well whatsoever, and it's very poorly paced, and they're trying to cram a lot into a 90-minute movie. I pretty quickly I started to think I bet there's more than one books that are at work here. So I guess I'm glad I'm vindicated on that standpoint. Let's get into the movie, and then I do want to talk about the books and how they relate to this movie, or perhaps don't relate to it, because that's always a point of emphasis whenever we talk about a book adaptation. So give me your general thoughts on Artemis Fowl, and then we're gonna get into spoilers real fast here, because I don't think it matters. So we'll go in on that. But let's start at least with general thoughts, and then we'll get going here.
Sure. It might be the worst young adult adaptation I've ever seen. I thought Wrinkle in Time, another Disney movie that was awful, but this might, surpass it, just because it makes no sense. I don't know how it cost $125 million.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
it's even as a Disney Plus movie, I don't know how this thing came into existence. I can't believe they're going to release this in an actual theater. So those are my general thoughts. The story is ridiculous. The characters don't really do anything or really make much sense, even if you don't know the books.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the director was thinking. It's like he just read the Wikipedia page and I didn't realize he was reading more than one summary.
You're making me almost wish I had read the first book just to have a greater grasp of how poorly this is adapted. That was one of the first things that stuck out to me. Was it's very clear, they're trying to tap into whatever the book had, or the strengths of the book and the book series and stuff. But you really look at the history of YA adaptations, and it's a really poor list of films. Like, there are very few that are actually fantasy related, whether it's Harry Potter type fantasy or this, I'm talking fairies and dragons and that kind of stuff, magic, etc. Or if you're talking the sort of sci-fi type fantasy, there are very few that have actually worked out well on screen. You've got the Harry Potter movies, and obviously those are the real banners of success, and what every studio seems to have been chasing for the last 20 plus years is trying to recreate the magic, my bad, of that, no pun intended. And then you have like the Hunger Games were very successful, but even those were that last movie really petered out in its theatrical run. And there are a few others, but there just aren't a lot that are both critically acclaimed and financially successful. The Twilight movies made a lot of money, but they're pretty universally panned. I know we've got a subset of VIPs in the Discord that will go to bat for the Twilight movies all day, and I do not belong to that subset. I think they're pretty terrible, and the books were... I read about 20 pages of one book, and I was like, I think that's probably enough for me. It just wasn't gonna go. And there's the Maze Runner, and you mentioned Wrinkle in Time, and then you just like go down the list, and you're just like, oh, that didn't work. This Divergent didn't work. The Host didn't work. I don't know, like Inkheart didn't. Aragon, gosh, Aragon.
I love that book. I love the book Aragon. As a kid.
I read Aragon, and I probably was a little too old for it, but I remember I at least had some fondness for the material. I'd never read the third book. I think by the time I got to the end of the second book, I was like, that's probably enough. But I really did dig the idea, at least, of the first one. And then you see that movie. Have you seen that movie? That's pretty tough.
It's terrible. It's awful.
So watching Artemis Fowl, those were the two movies that jumped out to me as far as like what this falls in line with. It was The Wrinkle in Time which is a book that I love and loved as a kid and read right before that movie came out last year or the year before, and was very disappointed by the adaptation. And then and Aragon, which at least with that one, I think that was a tougher adaptation because I don't think the source material was that strong. And so you can see how it could easily become something that's not particularly great. But I guess my point is, if you're watching a YA movie and the first two movies that jump to mind as comparisons are A Wrinkle in Time and Aragon, something has gone horribly wrong.
That's true. It's very true.
So I'm glad this was Disney Plus, and that we got to watch it at home. The other positive I'll say is that it was 90 minutes long. I love that. That was very helpful. If this had been... I started this last night at about midnight or 12:30 maybe, and I thought, if this ends up being... If I click over here and it's 2 hours long, I may just have to fudge this. I don't know if I can sit through a 2 hour or longer movie at this point, knowing that it's not going to be great. What do you think? Are there any pros that come to mind before? Because this is, I think it's fair to say this is going to end up being, we're gonna kind of pan this movie. So, is there any pros that come to mind for you?
You took the one pro. It's short. It's short. It's not over 2 hours, so that's the only pro I've got.
At least he had that. I thought some of the visuals were okay. It wasn't. It's not certainly not enough for a movie to. They weren't good enough for a movie to hang its hat on, so to speak. But if the story was better, if the acting was better, if there were other things in this movie that were of quality, then I think that the effects and the visuals would maybe add a little bit to that. At least it was. I still don't understand how this cost $110 or $120 million, but you can see how it could have been, 80 or something from the visual effects. Is that fair? Does that jive with you, or did it look horrific to you? I don't know. Maybe I'm watching with a positive eye.
I think the Haven City, when you go underground, you see the fairy world, like that was pretty good effects for what it was. Sure. Not the best, but then you also had the scene with Josh Gad opening his mouth,
yeah,
which is terrifying, but the most accurate depiction from the first book.
Okay.
So that did happen. That's what the character did.
Okay, boy. Well, I'm about out of positives, so let's start there because you mentioned Josh Gad. I don't hate Josh Gad. I feel like he's a bit divisive. Some people really, really dislike him. I don't. I just think he's somebody who's not capable of raising material. So if he's in a bad movie or a mediocre movie, you're going to typically get... It's not like he's going to take a mediocre movie and make it good, let alone take a bad movie and make it, mediocre. He's kind of cheesy and ridiculous, and in the right settings, he can do that quite well. I think he's good voice work in Frozen, and there's other stuff where he pops up where I think I enjoyed that. But there's also a lot of places where if the movie's not going well and then Josh Gad is getting a lot of screen time, I'm more likely to check out. I don't know, where do you fall on Josh Gad as a person, or as an actor, I should say? We don't know him personally. That I know of. I mean, I don't know, maybe you have some breaking news, but as an actor, where do you fall on him? And then let's talk about his performance here.
I think when he's just fits a role, I think he's better. He should not be leading any type of movie at all. And he said his voice work, Frozen, as good as Olaf, and I do like him on the new Apple Plus show Central Park. Mm-hmm. In minor role as the narrator there, but he shouldn't be carrying a movie.
Agree.
Ever.
Agree. So this character that he plays seemed like he would have been a big deal in the book. Is this a favorite character of yours, or is this a favorite character within Fowl Nation or Fowl Heads or whatever? I don't know what you guys call yourselves.
Okay, I have no idea. I think I've aged out of that a long time ago. But he is definitely one of the main characters.
Okay.
And for what he was, the funny of him being a giant dwarf, but the things, he wasn't a narrator in the story.
Okay.
Like, it makes no sense. The first book, you find out it's a case file at the end.
Oh, okay.
So it's like the whole book, you find out at the end, it's going over a case file because it was happening. And for his character, instead of being in the middle of the ocean in a weird prison. Josh Gad's character, he actually fakes his own death.
Okay.
So he can escape. So he's technically a bad guy because he fakes having a heart attack and he runs away. That's what happens at the end of the first book. He doesn't narrate, and Artemis Fowl is the smartest kid, you know. He hasn't shown it at all in this movie, but...
Yes. That was going to be my next point. We get this big monologue about how brilliant Artemis Fowl is, and really the only example of that we get is that he's kind of a snotty brat about his professors or his whatever, the chair that this dude is sitting in, and then that's like the example of like, oh, he knows all about he knows all about upholstery and antiques and stuff, and that's kind of it, because then for the rest of the movie, there's like one or two scenes where he seems to outsmart somebody who he shouldn't outsmart, but for the most part, he comes across as kind of not particularly smart, or at least not very clever. There's not a lot of cleverness to the actions that this kid takes through the course of the movie.
Yeah, his character, like most of the main cast, is just a different version. In the first trailer, they show like this weird fairy creature like flying in the air. That's how the book is introduced. It's Artemis and Butler. They go to find this fairy because they need the book so he can learn the fairy language, because he's a villain. That's the whole thing. He's a villain in the book.
Right.
He wants to steal gold from the fairies. He learns that they're real not because of his father. He learns through talking to people online, and he gives this fairy tainted magic, which makes her go through a withdrawal.
Okay.
In this children's book, so he shows like he's able to outsmart, because the whole goal of the book was, in the first one, he wanted the gold from the fairies.
Okay.
He didn't want whatever that machine was in the first book, and the father never shows up. He's not in the book. It makes no sense. And the mother's alive.
Okay. I'm seeing the problems with the translation on this for sure. And shocking to me too is that, like, look, Kenneth Branagh is not somebody who I would necessarily... It's not like he's on the list of directors for whom I say, well, if he's doing it, then I'm in. Like, I just trust that this guy's going to get it right. But I think his track record is more positive than not. You know, he did the Cinderella live action remake a few years ago, and that's, in hindsight, is one of the more successful films that have come out of that whole series. And I thought he did very well with that. He directed the first Thor. He's done some other stuff that is, if not great, then at least, solid, passable, that kind of thing. This will, I hope, is just going to end up being an outlier on his filmography, because I want to know why Kenneth Branagh takes this movie, and once he's taken that movie, then why are we doing it the way that we did it? Because it's very clear, again, having almost no background on this whatsoever, there's just a lot of lazy choices made directorially that lead you to believe, like, as I'm watching it, again, with no background, I'm just like, well, that can't be right. That can't be how it was done. It sounds like the book was has some darker depths to it and maybe some interest. And it's just odd when you take a movie like that, or excuse me, when you take a book that has a kid who is the villain. That's interesting. I mean, you can do something with that, and then they flip it immediately. And it's one of those, like, why even bother then? If we're going to completely change the entire narrative of the entire book and the entire book series, then why are we, what's the point? Does that make sense?
I totally agree, because I feel like his other work isn't that bad. The Cinderella, I agree with you, is one of the better ones. And it's not like he has these awful movies, in his portfolio. So that's why I wasn't, the first trailer, like, all right, well, he's not as bad. So other directors, I'd be on the fence. But it seems to me things were cut out, because that first trailer, that thing with the fairy, like, jumping up, that it seems like scenes were just taken out.
Sure. And
the studio was like, this is what we want.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that definitely could end up being what it is. Disney certainly enjoys tampering when they have the opportunity, but I also think there's got to be something to. I can't imagine they're buying a book about a kid who's a villain and this mysterious fantasy world and whatnot, and going in with the intention to do it like that and then changing it at the last minute. Like, there had to have been a plan along the way to, hey, we're gonna take this, we're gonna soften it a little bit, we're gonna we're going to take him away from being a quote unquote villain. And that just seems like a really poor idea. And that's how you get a 9% rotten movie, on Rotten. I mean, it's these are bad choices that we make along the way. The other thing I want to hit on real fast before we get out of here, the acting's terrible. I mean, it's so hard to do it. Look, I talked a little bit at the outset about YA movies. Part of the problem with the YA movie is with teenagers and stuff. It's really hard to find teenagers a lot of teenagers especially, who are good actors and who can portray effectively the characters that are on the paper. Even if the script is good, even if the source material is good, it's really hard to find enough teenagers that can do that stuff effectively. And then the difficulty level goes up exponentially when you take it away from teenagers, like real teenagers, and then you go to kids. I mean, I don't know how old this kid is who plays Artemis. God bless him. I mean, he's awful. He's awful on the screen. And he has no credits to his name, so it's not like I can go back and find something else and look at and see like, well, he was actually pretty good in this, just had poor direction or something. He's bad. And then when you surround him with a few other very young actors, it's almost impossible for young actors like that to elevate material. And so when you combine, these kids they're really unseasoned and probably don't really know what they're doing, and then you give them a bad script and just probably what seems like pretty bad direction, you're doomed from the outset. There's no way of saving that.
No, absolutely. And the funny thing is, like, some of the characters didn't even have to be teenagers. The butler sister, it's actually his sister, not his niece. She's older. She's like a teenager, 16, 17. And that kid, Artemis Fowl, maybe just because he's Irish. Actually, I don't even know if he is Irish.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's why he was picked. But bad acting with awful, direction and a script is just, it's doomed from the start.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, absolutely. Judi Dench had picked great movies, her character is supposed to be an old school New York City kind of cop. A guy with like a big cigar in his mouth, always angry.
See, Colin Farrell would have been good at that, I would think. Not necessarily Dame Judi Dench.
They got him for the, we can say he's in the movie, even though he shouldn't be. And he's in the movie for what, 6 minutes?
Yeah. That's. I love Colin Farrell. He's one of my favorite actors, and I know Richard can't agree. But he's certainly not above making a terrible movie and taking a movie that pays a bill or buys a new house or something. And the same could be said for Judi Dench. Dames need to buy flats too. So it's I get it. Like get paid, but
it's true. And Total Recall, it's a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you combine like that with Cats and some of the other stuff she's done recently, you're just like, oh.
Yeah,
you're better. You're so much better than this. It was very off-putting seeing her in that kind of role. I'm all for casting against type, but maybe not. Maybe not to that extreme, because it was pretty rough. But it really, honestly, I'm not sure it would matter, because this poor kid. He's not good, and he's got to carry the movie, because the whole movie he's the titular character. This whole movie is about him, and he's pretty rough. So I don't know how much it maybe would have helped to have. It certainly would have helped to have a script that was good and dialogue that was strong and weren't kind of constantly making little callbacks or semi winky jokes, and it just really fell flat on those fronts, and then you got a kid trying to deliver them. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not. We didn't like the David Bowie joke that they threw in there. I'm like, oh my god, why is this in this movie? It makes no sense.
Rough. You know what it reminded me of was the Santa Claus, but the worst version of the Santa Claus. And I know it's like elves or fairies and all that sort of stuff. That's not like some unique, but I mean those scenes with the elves at the North Pole and stuff in the Santa Claus. If those were dumbed down by 30% and then the entire movie was like that, that's what you're getting with this movie. I think it was pretty daggum painful. I don't know, man. I'm about out of content on this one. This was a tough one to talk. It's certainly a tough one to find any positives, but even the negatives is just like why. It's just a lot of whys. So clearly they thought this was going to be a franchise. I do not see it that way. I don't know. Where do you stand on this?
It should never be a franchise. One movie's enough. And I'm just not going to say I ever liked this film or the books. I'm going to redact my previous statement from the beginning that I liked these books as a child.
That's fine. No one will call you on it. Just pretend like you always were a Potter fan, and it's fine. Everybody will.
I don't like Potter though either.
Yeah, this is tough. I imagine this is real tough for those of you that were big into the books, because this is just a really poor. It has to feel like a real kind of a slap in the face when you poorly adapt something that is beloved, especially something you loved as a child. It really sucks. It really feels like a betrayal of sorts. This was rough. This was real rough around. Do you think it's 9% on Rotten Tomatoes rough? Well, that's my last question. Then I want to get grades. You feel like this is worthy of that sub 10% rating that it has right now?
I think it deserves at least a 20 or less. I think 9, you're getting to single digits. It's some of the worst. Like, it's just such a boring, awfully acted film. But there's nothing even really good funny except for that scene with Josh Gad in the dirt. But there are worse films. Like, I think A Wrinkle in Time is worse than this film.
Okay.
It's more boring and somehow doesn't stick to the source material as well.
I would say A Wrinkle in Time, for me at least, A Wrinkle in Time is more frustrating or angers me more because that was a book that I really dug. Maybe I would feel that way if I had read these books. But but I'm kind of with you. I think it's on that path. I think I gave A Wrinkle in Time like a low D. I'm pretty sure it was in my bottom 10 of the year or very close to it. But like, I've seen worse movies this year, and I'm kind of of the mindset of I totally understand why it is. I understand how Rotten Tomatoes works. It's an aggregate and all that blah 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 blah. But 9% puts you into territory of like the epically bad, all-time terrible movies, and I'm not totally sure that it's quite that bad, despite the fact that we've just spent the last 30 minutes saying that it's awful. It's just I mean that it's quite bad. That rating puts you in the kind of territory where you're talking about like with one of the worst movies of the decade, and I'm not sure that it qualifies for that. Personally,
I agree. It's a terrible film, but is it an all-time terrible film?
Right.
No, and if Capone has a way higher rating somehow than this, it's a 42, I think.
Totally. I was looking at my letterbox just now because this year's usually I kind of have a feel in a normal year. I kind of have a feel for what's at the top, what's at the bottom, what am I comparing this to as far as the grades for the year go. But this year is so ridiculous and wheels off. It's impossible. But yeah, I was looking at my letterbox and I thought this is better than Bloodshot and it's better than Capone. So, even if it's the third worst movie I've seen this year, it's a smaller sample size because of how, awful and weird everything has been. But yeah, I understand how it works. I get why it is where it is, but it is a little bit surprising that there weren't more critics who at least were like, it's a kid's movie, it's not good, but it's fine, and gave it like the kind of partial fresh rating or something like that would keep that number up a little bit. But no, that's not the way it turned out. So in keeping with that, let's give our grades. Quinn, start us off there. What's your grade for Artemis Fowl?
I'm going to give it overall a D. Like I said, I love the books, and from a fan of the books, it's terrible. But what we just said, it's not one of the worst films I've ever seen. Like, I can't give it an F because, like I said, Bloodshot gets an F. Capone gets an F. But this one, it's harmless. It's a bad, YA adaptation, and it's short.
Yes.
I think it was 2 hours. I give this an F right away.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. If this dove in more, I would have a real hard time coming out giving it higher than what I'm going to give, which is a D. A low D. It's not good, but I there's a world in which we return to theaters in July or August and we start getting movies every week, and this is not one of the 10 worst movies I saw this year. Whereas for Capone and for Bloodshot, and I don't know, there might be another movie in there somewhere. As I was watching it, I was thinking, this is one of the 10 worst movies I'm going to see this year. This is so bad. It's a little bit, you said harmless. I think that's a great word for it. It's really not good at all. It's aggressively not good, but it's also a bit harmless. And so maybe that's just me giving something a pass for in some way for being a kid's movie. But by the way, my kid wouldn't watch this. I tried to get him to get in, and he was just like, no thanks, I'm out. He was not interested in Artemis Fowl at all. So I think it has to be considered a failure just on that matter. I don't know a single kid, or I haven't seen, family on Facebook or anything that's like, hey man, we watched Artemis Fowl with the kids and they really dug it. No, but I don't think anybody is having that experience. So you've got to say that's a failure. And also, maybe stop doing this. Stop doing the YA adaptation thing. It really doesn't work. And Disney has tried over and over again to create this kind of a franchise and this sort of series, and it just doesn't work. It's impossible to create at this point. I feel like it's impossible to create another Harry Potter. And even if you're looking to make like another Hunger Games or something, I don't know. It's really, really difficult, and it's probably not worth the effort once you actually get there. So anyway, that's where I stand. So we give it, we're both giving it D's. Quinn, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you talking this one out for me and subbing in for Kent Richard. You pinch hit for two guys and you did quite well. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, glad to be here, and thank you very kindly.
Yeah, man. Look, you have a podcast that just recently launched. Why don't you pitch that real fast and let the listeners know where they can find it and where they can find you?
Sure. So the podcast that I started a few weeks ago, it's called The Dive-In. It's with myself and my friend Noah Levine. It's all people on the podcast each week. We have a guest. I work at a summer camp usually called Camp Scatico, but that's not happening anymore.
Right.
So we're having guests from the camp come on each week, and we just review a movie of their choice. And we just talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
nice,
one of my favorite films of last year. And upcoming next week, we're talking about Parasite, which I love that film, incredible, and looking forward to it. So you can find The Dive-In. It's on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Awesome. Check that out. Quinn, thanks so much for being here. Thank you, listeners, for listening to us this week. We'll be back next week with a regularly scheduled episode. I assume Kent Richard will be back with me. I have no idea what we're talking about. We are all kind of waiting on pins and needles to see if we will be able to get to the Mulans and the Tenets and the et cetera, that is still sort of hanging in the balance that potentially could be released in July and August. We're hoping that we're going to get to those, but our schedule's kind of up in the air until we see how those things work out, which drives me insane because you know how much I love a schedule. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for listening. Come back next week, and until then, we'll see you at the cinema. Goodbye.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face.
They're making me yah-yah. The salads and scrambled